Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Tuesday, December 2nd, a little bit before 7, and this is our daily recap video on the trades, holdings, and declarations for ULTY, LFGY, and SLTY. They are YieldMax option income strategy funds. Follow me on X if you don't already at ETF_Inspector1 to know when videos are premiering and to get reposts of different announcements from the different ETFs. So like we said, today was declaration day. There is a separate video going into all the details for that right here, 14 minutes long. It's a little extra long because there were also Target 25 and Target 12 announcements along with the regular Group 1 weeklies. So if you're interested in all that, check it out. But we will just talk about these three compared to what my guesstimate was when we are each spreadsheet. All right, so starting off, ULTY was up about 1% today. At some points, obviously, it was even nicer. Right off the peak, it actually ended down about 0.7, so it was closer to 2% at the beginning of the day. LFGY also had a nice day, ending 1% up, and obviously much lower than its intraday highs. Missed that one. Down about 1.4% off the top of the day, so they were up nearly 2.5%. And then surprisingly, we actually got all three in the green today, which doesn't happen very often because ULTY and SLTY are kind of doing the opposite thing, but it's not exactly the opposite, so you can have the possibility of things like today happening. They were up about 0.5% and just barely broke into the positive there at the end of the day. All right, we'll start off with ULTY Anonymous. If you're here for our meeting, shoot, I should have got a drink. All right, before the trades, we'll talk about the announcement. I was way off. I assumed because they have lowered the implied volatility, the weighted average, within the fund to the low 40s, that they were now going to be paying distribution rates in the 40s as opposed to the old high range numbers. And instead, they paid out they announced 58.81 cents per share, which is nearly 44% higher than my 33-cent guesstimate. So I'm sure everybody likes that payment a lot more than you liked my guesstimate, and I'll just hang my head in shame on that one. All right, next we take a look at the trades for the day. ADI is still a little bit new. I think it's like analog devices. I wasn't too far off. So they are closing and rolling to next week already. For them, that cost $817,000. IBIT, we've got to close and roll to next week as well, adjusting from 50 to 55. That cost $1.3 million. Eli Lilly Company closing and rolling their call to next week. Actually brought in $260,000, dropping their strike price by $20. Morgan Stanley, we've got a roll to next week as well. Kind of surprising to see rolls to next week already on a Tuesday when there's no holiday or anything in the week. So it's odd, but they're looking at the extrinsic value that's in the premium to see what's worth it. $308,000 credit on Morgan Stanley, and what are they? Take a quick look there. 170. So they closed 162.50s and rolled to 167.50. So it probably took rolling to next week to be able to make this roll at a net positive, since they had to roll up by $5 a share. And then SoFi closing and rolling to next week as well, going from 28.50 to 32. That cost $2 million. All in all, options trades cost $3.6 million on the trading day, so that's a negative realized loss there. It's going to go along with share values declining by $16.4 million. So now you're probably wondering how in the world did they go up if they lost money trading and their share values dropped. And the way that works is obviously everything is different. Sometimes it hurts for a fund to go down, and other times it doesn't hurt nearly as bad. If something where the options were deep in the money goes down, then while it is dropping in market value, it is also helping your overall assets under management because the cost to close out the calls dropped as well. So that's going to be kind of what happened today with that. So I've had some feedback. Some people like the quicker overview. Other people saying they're not really able to pick up on all the information. So I'm gonna try and give all the information, but just get through it a little faster. So I don't know if I want to keep on saying what the strike prices are on every call, or maybe that's something we'll edit out since we've already talked about it in the beginning. So we'll just say calls on Alcoa are 1.3% out, that kind of thing. So the weighted move, before we get into it, if you owned all the shares within the fund instead of the fund, you would have lost 1.2% today. You would have gone down in value. You don't lose unless you sell. But instead, it was up nearly 1% based on the fund. We talked about why, because of costs of options lowering because of it. So Alcoa down 0.7% today. Their calls are 1.3% out of the money, and their puts are 4.6% out. I'll be talking about sold options, so sold calls, sold puts. Purchase puts, I would only really bring them up if they were going deep in the money and starting to gather a lot of value. Analog devices was up 2.8% today. They rolled all their positions. Broadcom was down 5.3%. Their calls are now 7.5% out. American Express down 1.25%. Their calls are about 4% out. Their puts are getting close to the money, 0.17%. Cash, they've got $30 million, and government obligation funds 51. So one thing I want to mention today, there was issues with the holdings download for ULTY as well as I think it was SLTY. So all of these values are actually still based off of the previous day. So they won't be correct. I've got all the actual positions are correct. I went through yesterday's trades and adjusted all my holdings to make sure all the options were correct. And so that's going to make all the percentages correct and today's move correct. So the only thing that's actually not correct is the market value of all these options and shares, because of the fact that so that actually might also be the reason. That's going to also be the reason why it looked like a $16 million loss. I'm kind of processing this live time because all right, so they did not drop in value by 16 million. It's going to look like it on here, but that's because the holdings did not come out all day. It actually just came out a little while ago, and I don't have an extra hour to put that together. So it looks like share values are dropping from basically the start on Monday, but we already know they did drop on Monday by 26 million. So realistically, it's probably more of a $10 million increase in value on the day. So just keep that in mind. So, and that's also going to be, that's not why the way to move though, because the way to move is the weight multiplied by today's change. So the way to move did actually move down by about 1%. So I don't know. All right, we'll just keep moving. Let's see. American Express. We talked about cash. Coinbase down 3.5%. Still 4.5% out on their calls. Circle down 3.1%. Calls are still 7 to 8.5% out of the money. GDX was down nearly 2% today. 2.9% out of the money on calls. 1.9% out on sold puts. GLD did a lot better than GDX. only dropping 0.18%. Their calls are 2% out, and their puts are just about 6% out of the money. Alphabet was down 1.3%. Their calls are 4.5% out of the money, and their puts are only 0.25%. Come on, Alphabet. You're supposed to be the stability in the fund. You're not supposed to be dropping to the point that puts are going in the money. Robinhood down nearly 2%. Calls are now 4% out. IBIT was up 0.25%, but their calls have gone into the money. Well, they were already in the money, and now they're deeper, 2 to 3%. IBM down 2.1%. Calls are 4.3% out of the money. Puts are 1.4% out. Eli Lilly Company down 2.8%. We did see these calls get closed out and rolled to next week, I believe, also. And now I just remembered IBIT, those 50s at 3% in the money, they got rolled as well. They're not in play. We already talked about ADI. Lilly's puts at 1070 are still in play, and they are in the money as well, 2.3%. Lam Research Company up 1.4%, still another 1.1 to go on those calls. Meta Platforms was down 0.13%. Calls are 1.2 and 2.7% out of the money. We've got Morgan Stanley was down 0.33%. They did adjust their sold puts, but their sold calls are 0.5% out of the money still. Palantir up 1.33%. They're still 2.5% out of the money on their calls. Quanta Services, that's PWR, down 2.1%. They've got calls that are 3.3 and 7.7% out of the money, and their sold puts are 12% out. QQQ, they've got this different strategy here, right? The puts are purchased for this week, and the calls are sold for 2 weeks from this coming Friday. So the sold calls are 1.2% out of the money after a 0.4% increase today. Southern Copper was just up a fraction. Whoa, did you guys just see that update? Up a little bit more of a fraction, 0.09%. So the calls are 7.5% out of the money, and the puts are 7.3% out. NewScale Power was the big loser today. They are SMR is their stock ticker. 5.3% drop, took their calls almost 11% out of the money. SoFi was down 0.7%. All positions were closed and rolled to next week. Teradyne was the big winner, up 4.4%. It took their calls into the money, 2.6% at the 185s, and then they've got another smaller chunk, 370 contracts at 190 that are just barely 6 cents out of the money. Puts are 5.2% out of the money, sold at 180. The 20-year Treasury triple leverage fund dropped 3.4%. That's actually a fairly big move for that fund. 5.3% out of the money on sold calls. And Twilio up just a fraction, 6 cents or 0.05%. 1.7 and 3.2% out of the money on sold calls, and 1.3 to 2.1% out of the money on sold puts. Again, we're going to ignore that $16 million drop today because since we never got a download of the holdings based off of how things ended yesterday, then everything over here is still how things ended the day before. So then these moves look like they are much greater than they actually were because there was already a $26 million drop on Monday. All right, there's $1.3 billion in assets under management. They underwent a reverse split, so now there's 34-ish million shares. NAV at the start, but that's actually at the start of Monday because the holding download never came out. Either way, closing very close to 40 today, so that's a little bit of a recovery from the previous day. And average call is 2.9% out of the money, meaning we can capture about 2 to 3% more in our share price of upward movement before we're going to be paying to kind of capped and paying to close out calls. And average put is 3.6% out of the money. So really, we just want to make sure we always win those puts because we don't want it to go down at all. So if we sell puts and it stays flat or goes up, then it's just free money we got to keep. All right, next up, we've got LFGY. Only trade they made was on XYZ, which is block. They brought in $60,000, closing and rolling to a closer to the money strike, closing the 68s, selling 63s. They adjusted the other end of their call spread as well. That was the total for the trading day. Realized gains of 60,000. Their share prices within the fund dropped by $301,000. But before we switch over to the next page, let's talk about the guesstimate. This was the closest one I had, and it's pretty far off. So I said 38.25 cents, and they announced 34.98 cents per share, just about 35 cents. So I was off. I shouldn't have moved it up. I would have been a little closer if I stuck with my IV estimate, but nearly 35 cents. And that is going to be the new low, lowest payment ever. And I was off by 9.3%. Again, so now LFGY's holdings upload was just fine today. So everything on this side is how the day started, and everything over here is how the day ended. So in every video, the share price of the value of the options themselves is always delayed because we don't have stock ticker updates for every single option. But $300,000 decrease in the share values was not enough to hurt the fund because in that case the decrease in the cost to close out the options was enough to offset that and make the share price of LFGY move up on the day. We had bullish up 5%. It was a good day for most of the crypto names. They're still out of the money by about 1%. Bitmine, the big winner, up 10%. This is what you love to see. They're still out of the money, so we got to capture all of that. Another nearly 10% to go. BitDeer was down about 3.5%, so their calls are now 8% out of the money. They got a little bit of cash, 400,000, another 2.6 million in government funds for a total of about 3 million in money on the side, we'll call it. Cipher Mining dropped 10.4% and not the biggest loser, so that's rough. Now 13.3% out on their sold calls. CleanSpark was down 2.6%. They're 20+% out on their calls. Coinbase up 1.3%, still another 6.3% to go on their 280 calls. Core Scientific was down 4.6%. Calls are now 7.5% out. Circle Internet Group's calls are 8.5% out of the money now after a 2% increase today. iShares Ethereum Trust ETF, which is ETHA stock ticker, up 8.38%. Still another 4% out of the money, so they got to capture all that. Galaxy Digital up 2.25%, still 8.4% out of the money on calls. GameStop up 0.1%. Unfortunately, they were already in the money, so they're just a little further in the money on those 2250s. Robinhood was up 2.2%. Now, I could have swore we already talked about Robinhood and we gave a different percentage. What is happening? Here's Robinhood saying it's up 1.98%, and then the other one says it's up 2.2. Somebody's lying. All right, that one seems current, so let's update this one now. Whew. All right, well, I'm glad you guys can see it. I can see it right here, Robinhood Markets. We scroll to this one, Robinhood Markets. It's the same thing. Excel's giving us two different. Never mind. Again, it's because ULTY's holdings hadn't uploaded from the day before, so we were looking at from a longer ago time period. So this one is correct. Let's check that. Robinhood, 2.2%. All right, sorry for the confusion. Back to the video. Calls are 3.9% out of the money and 5.6% out. Hut 8 Corp was the big loser, down 13.5%, making their calls 16.7% out of the money now. IBIT was up 6.5%. Their calls are 2.25% in the money, so they went in the money today. Mara was up 3.39%, still just barely out on those $12 calls, 0.75%. MBTX, they don't own any shares. It's just this put debit spread or put a bear put spread. Buying the 195s, share price moving up is going to decrease the value of those purchased puts. Mercado Libre up 2.5%, took those 2090s in the money by 1.2%. Strategy was up 5.78%. It did take some of the calls in the money by 0.7%, about half, the other half still 3.4% out. NU Holdings was up about 0.75%. They're trading a put spread on this, so the sold puts are 9% out of the money, feeling pretty safe. Nvidia was up 0.86%, making their calls now 0.8% in the money. So they were pretty close to at the money at the start of the day. Opera up 2.25%. Calls are 3.6% out of the money, and sold puts are 3.7% out. PayPal, 0.5% increase, took their sold puts a little further out of the money, now 3%. Riot Platforms down 1.6%. Calls are 5% out of the money. SharpLink Gaming was up 3.8%. Calls are still 10.3% out. And Block down 6.5%. All positions were closed and rolled to a closer strike. So that's how we had a $300,000 decrease in the share values. So that doesn't tell the whole story. That's just the shares themselves. There's 171 million in assets under management. Yesterday, people actually sold some LFGY, 50,000 shares, bringing it to 6,175,000. The NAV at the start of the day, 27.75, before rising to around 28.16. Average sold calls still 6.2% out of the money, so we can still capture lots of upside before we've got to start closing out options on average within the fund. All right, finally, we've got SLTY. And we did have a closeout of Credo Technology, so they're no longer shorting them. And unfortunately, it was bad timing on this one for sure. So you see they paid $209.82. And let's take a look at their, that's brutal. So they took off in the morning, they closed it out, and then they dropped back down, ending at 188.44. So they paid over $20 a share higher than the close on 10,100 shares. Ouch. Then they're also making some adjustments on their sold puts on AppLovin from $595 up to $640. Just closing out everything on Credo since they closed out the short. And QQQ, they are also closing out their 610s and selling 614s. All in all, it was a $309,000 credit on the options trading side of things. We don't include the shares in the options. And they had a $36,000, almost $37,000 decrease in the value of the shares within their fund. So they were still able to move upward since their shares only dropped by a small amount compared to a 10 times as much bringing in. We take a look at the announcement they made today. I was way off. Not sure why they dropped it so much, but let's take a quick look. Is this the lowest payment from SLTY? Announcing 42.65. Yes, it is. 46 was their lowest ever before this, so they are a good bit lower than that. And when we take a look, I mean, I guess they are pretty much sitting at their right around their all-time lows, so it makes sense for lower payments. So 42.65, my guess of 53 was off by 24%. Luckily, you guys are just here for the information and the dad jokes and not the estimates. All right. I said I would go more information, but we're not to the point of putting all that info in for SLTY. So everything that we've already talked about in the week look ahead video remains the same, with the exception of we just swapped out our app loving options and closed out Credo Technology. Credo was the big winner today, obviously up 10%. Unfortunately, when they closed them, they were up a whole lot more than 10%, a whole lot more. So they got roughed up on that one for sure. The biggest loser was Block, down 6.5%. That one helped the fund a lot, decreasing the cost to close out. They also adjusted their Invesco QQQ options. And what else can we say? Puts sold on Better Home Finance are way in the money at this point. They are really struggling. Calls sold on GameStop are going against them as well, and they're just supposed to generate some extra income. This is primarily hoping things go down and selling the downside. Lemonade's puts are in the money as well, 2.5%. Moderna's puts are in the money by 1.8%. Unicure, way in the money. Puts are 2.6 to 10.5% in the money. Block's puts did go in the money decently today after that big drop, 4.8%. And Wynn Resorts, moving up, took their sold calls into the money. There's 27,600,000 not outstanding shares, assets under management, 750,000 outstanding shares. NAV at the start of the day, 36.82, closing around 36.93. The average puts about 3.5% out of the money, so downward movement can be captured as upward movement in the fund by about 3.5% before they're capped. That's on average. Every fund's different. And that is all I have for you. So if you want to see all the rest of the declarations from today, check out this video. And then if you haven't already, please go check out the interview with Michael Coe. He is a great guest and very knowledgeable. And he does not just give short answers. He really goes pretty deep in explaining everything he talks about. So I got a dad joke for you. And so we'll wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Appreciate all the support. And here is your dad joke. I just had to quit my job at the helium factory. I will not be spoken to in that tone. All right. Good luck trading tomorrow. Have a good night. I'll catch you in the next video.